Loss of control in flight. It's an accident category in aviation which, on the surface, is easy to understand. An accident where pilots lose control of their aircraft. This is obviously something we try to prevent, so airliners have several built-in systems to assist pilots in loss of control situations. However, despite these major advances, we still have seen cases of loss of control in recent years. In this video, we're going to look at another one, but also delve into why these accidents keep happening and how we can prevent them in the future. It's the 28th of December 2014, and AirAsia Flight 8501 is en route from Surabaya, Indonesia to Singapore. On board are 156 passengers and 6 crew. AirAsia is a Malaysian-based low-cost airline. It operates flights all over Asia at extremely cheap prices, allowing many people the opportunity to fly who might have never experienced it before. On this flight, the majority of passengers are Indonesian nationals. The pilot in command is also from Indonesia. Captain Irianto has been with AirAsia since 2008. He is 53 and has around 20,000 flight hours, 4,687 of which are on the A320. First Officer Remy Placel is from France with 2,247 hours. He has been at the company for just under 2 years, with the majority of his time logged on this type. The A320-200 is one of the world's most popular narrow-body aircraft. It can carry 180 passengers, but what we're going to focus on is the cockpit. Like most modern airliners, the instruments are displayed on screens to the pilots, but unlike most, they control the aircraft using a side stick. There is no direct link between the side stick and the control surfaces. Instead, movement of the stick corresponds to a particular G-load. The A320's computers then move the control surfaces to match the ordered G-load or pitch rate. This allows for some impressive features to assist the pilots, such as increased stability in turbulence and auto trim. It also provides safeguards against unusual attitude situations, such as high speed and angle of bank protections, as well as a strong defense against the stall. A stall occurs when a plane reaches such a high angle of attack that airflow separates from the wing and lift suddenly reduces. But in its normal mode, the A320 does not allow a pilot to exceed the critical angle of attack, even if the side stick is pulled back continuously. So, let's delve into what happens on the flight of AirAsia 8501. The A320-200 is cruising at 32,000 feet. It's about half an hour into the 2-hour flight, as the sun begins to rise over the horizon. In the cockpit, the pilots are busy analysing some upcoming weather. Cumulonimbus or thunderstorm clouds are forming ahead, with tops reaching 44,000 feet. The thunderstorms will produce quite significant turbulence, so the pilots need to avoid the worst areas. Just as they're discussing the weather though, a caution message pops up on the ECAN.
Caution for the rudder travel limiter?
Yes.
Okay. Auto flight rudder travel limiter system, ECAN actions.
Go ahead.
The rudder travel limiter is a feature of the Airbus's flight augmentation computer. To avoid high structural loads, it limits the amount that the rudder can be deflected as a function of speed. At low speeds, the rudder can deflect up to 25 degrees, but at high speeds, such as in the cruise, just 3.8 degrees of deflection is allowed by the limiter. The appearance of a rudder travel limiter caution is no big concern for the pilots in the cruise stage of the flight. The ECAM simply directs them to reset the two flight augmentation computers, allowing the RTL function to reboot, and the reset appears to work. With both FACs back on, the ECAM checklist is complete, and both RTLs return to functioning normally. So, the pilots get back to the weather. They call air traffic control and request to deviate left of track to avoid the thunderstorm.
Center Redcap 8501. Request 15 miles left due to weather.
Redcap 8501, roger, 15 miles left is approved.
The transcript we have available for AirAsia 8501 is limited. However, the accident report does contain snippets of some of the most pertinent statements. The dialogue you're hearing is recreated using these excerpts. With deviations left of track approved, the first officer, who is pilot flying, takes up a heading of 310. Soon after, the aircraft probably flies into the cloud. The FO conducts a cruise briefing, outlining plans of action should an engine failure or emergency descent occur, and he nominates an alternate airport in the unlikely case that it should be required. As he completes the briefing, the sound of a master caution chime rings through the cockpit again. It's the exact same caution the pilot saw just minutes ago, for the rudder travel limiter system. They run through the ECAM checklist, resetting the flight augmentation computers one by one. And again, the rudder travel limiter returns to normal. The pilots are then instructed by air traffic control to change frequencies. They contact Jakarta radar.
Jakarta radar, red cap 8501 maintaining flight level 310.
Red Cap 8501, radar, report when clear of weather, please.
Roger. And we'd like to request a climb to a higher cruising level, red cap 8501.
Red Cap 8501, what is your intended altitude?
Request climb to 38,000 feet, red cap 8501.
Roger, stand by for climb.
The captain is requesting a higher level to get above the cloud, and out of the areas of turbulence. There's no need to inform air traffic control of their issues, since they're so minor. But shortly after, a master caution pops up once again. It's for the rudder travel limiter, and the ECAM presents the exact same checklist. It's only been 4 minutes since the pilots just dealt with the problem, but their only option is to run through the checklist once again. They do so, and like clockwork, the fault disappears. Just 115 seconds later, the rudder travel limiter has kicked out again. This is the 4th time the fault has occurred, and the interval between occurrences is decreasing. The pilots want to fix it once and for all. It's clear to them that the ECAM checklist isn't enough, as the fault will simply reoccur within minutes if they follow it. So the captain draws on a procedure he saw just days earlier. It happened on the ground at Surabaya on the 25th of December, when a rudder travel limiter caution appeared after pushback. An engineer attended the aircraft and reset the flight augmentation computer circuit breakers, then later replaced FAC2. During the process, however, the captain queried as to if he could reset the circuit breakers in flight should the same problem occur, and the engineer stated that if the ECAM directed to do so, then yes, he could reset the circuit breakers in flight. So probably through misunderstanding, and with the ECAM not solving the issue, the captain believes that resetting the circuit breakers is a valid option when dealing with a rudder travel limiter problem. What he doesn't realise though, is that there's a reason the ECAM doesn't direct for them to be reset. Unlike resetting the flight augmentation computers in accordance with the ECAM checklist, pulling the circuit breakers will remove power from the system entirely. Once they are pushed back in, the computer won't be fully re-energized until the FAC push buttons on the overhead panel are pressed, something which won't be obvious to Captain Irianto. This is why Airbus does not recommend resetting any circuit breakers in flight unless the pilots fully understand the consequences. After witnessing the procedure on the ground, the captain may think he does, but if he was to check the aircraft's manuals, he would find that the FAC circuit breakers are not on the list of breakers approved to be reset. Doing so is going to be the start of a downhill sequence. The autopilot will kick off, and with both flight augmentation computers offline, the Airbus's advanced stall protection will be unavailable. Let's see how this develops into our loss of control in flight.
Red Cap 8501, cleared to climb flight level 340.
Air traffic control will continue to call the pilots, but no reply will be heard. The circuit breakers have been pulled, and the autopilot has disconnected. The sound of the cavalry charge should alert the pilots, but the first officer doesn't take manual control for another 9 seconds. During this time, the inertia of the rudder pushes it 2 degrees left. With both FACs unavailable, this movement is uncompensated for, and the aircraft begins banking.
Oh my god. Level, level, level. Pull down, pull down, pull down, pull down. Pull down, pull down,
What is going wrong?
pull down. My god. Pull, pull. Pull down, pull down. Pull up. Select capped 3.
The A320 drops at 15,000 feet per minute. In just a few moments, it goes from straight and level flight to being out of control and plummeting towards the ocean. It crashes into the Java Sea 42 minutes after takeoff. The aircraft is destroyed, all 156 passengers and 6 crew are killed. By the 13th of January, just over 2 weeks later, the wreckage of AirAsia 8501 is fully recovered. Just under a year later, Indonesia's National Transport Safety Committee released their final report into the crash. It confirmed, as expected, that the pilots had lost control in flight. The malfunction of the rudder travel limiter units was the beginning of the critical chain of events caused by cracked soldering within the electrical circuits of the unit. Following the loss of the autopilot, the first officer took too long to respond, as his attention was away from the primary flight display. He then likely became spatially disorientated, rolling sharply right, then left. The captain repeated the words "pull down," but this could have easily been misinterpreted, with pull corresponding to pulling the stick back, exactly the opposite of what was required in this situation. As you may have noticed, this is certainly not the first time a crew has unexpectedly stalled a plane, even in modern times. So what is causing pilots to lose control of aircraft in these situations, and what is being done to prevent it? Loss of control accounts for just 8% of total accidents, but is the most frequent category of fatal accidents. Research from IATA has found a number of contributing factors, and all of these are important, but what we're going to focus on is just one: flight crew performance. Degraded flight crew performance is common to almost all loss of control crashes, where the pilots don't recognize the undesired state of the aircraft, don't respond to it quick enough, or become disorientated. So why does this keep happening? Let's look at pilot training. Recovering from a stall is introduced within the first few lessons of initial training. At a safe altitude, an instructor will slow the aircraft, and as it approaches the stall, the student will push down on the stick to re-energize airflow over the wings, allowing lift to be restored. Practicing the maneuver typically occurs at a high, safe altitude, and pilots are trained to recover as quickly as possible, usually within a few hundred feet. This is an effective way to provide a new pilot with a foundation of skills required to be a safe operator. However, as pilots rise through the ranks and filter into airlines, this basic stall recovery is never really built upon. Even in multi-million-dollar simulators, pilots still practice stall recovery from straight and level flight. We know that loss of control crashes occur when an aircraft stalls in an unusual or unexpected way, often at high altitudes. It would therefore seem more important to focus on reducing confusion and loss of awareness, rather than a knee-jerk reaction to recover as quickly as possible. We saw this with 8501. A recovery here needed to be more thoughtful than pitching down slightly. It was in a state literally never seen by most pilots in real life or in a simulator, since airline pilots rarely practice recovering from anything more than the most benign stall, let alone one combined with an unusual attitude. It's been viewed as negative training to allow pilots to see what a stall actually looks like, even in a simulator, which probably wouldn't recreate the situation perfectly anyway. In the last few years though, things are beginning to change. Airlines are introducing thorough upset recovery training, where there is an emphasis on situational awareness and recognition of unusual attitudes so they can be recovered from promptly. One country where loss of control is much less prevalent is the US, where the culture of pilot training and pilots in airlines promotes as much hand flying as possible, with the autopilot off, allowing the development of thorough tools and skills to do with flying the plane, in all stages of flight. Perhaps it is here that we find the most basic strategy for preventing loss of control in flight, going back to the basics and training pilots to be pilots. Whatever the solution, things are changing for the better. In 2019, the US National Transportation Safety Board removed loss of control in flight from their list of top 10 transportation risks. What we'll look for in the next few years is for this trend to continue around the world.